I picked the text that's on the screen there, Psalm 127, verse 3, and it reads, "Sons are a heritage from the Lord, children a reward from him." Now, Jill's in the front row here. Jill and I had 4 children, so that doesn't make us experts. It just means we've had 4 experiences, okay? But what we learned is that kids can be both a blessing and a challenge, okay? They can bring you joy and grief, and they can also bring you smiles and wrinkles. Okay, and so I put together an acronym for the word Father, and with it I have titles, job descriptions, and scriptures. And this might not be everything that a father should be, but if you can do these things, you're going to be one terrific father. So let's start it with F. F for father, okay? And I use the word faithful. And a father should be faithful. A father should not hide their faith. A father should share their faith with their children. And I use Deuteronomy 6 through 7. And it reads as follows: "These commandments that I give you today are to be upon your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, and when you lie down and when you get up." That pretty much is morning, noon, and night, isn't it? Okay, it's at home, it's in the marketplace. It's with your neighbors, it's with all kinds of people. And what I have found is that people will say, "Well, I don't want to share my faith because they won't like me." And that was me a long time ago. And the Lord said to me, "They don't like you anyways, Nick." No, you wouldn't believe how many times I say that in my counseling office. "Well, they won't like me." I said, "They don't like you anyways. Because if they liked you, they would treat you better," okay? Anyone can father a child, but it takes a real special person to be a dad. All right? And we need to understand that. Pass on your faith to your children. Let your children see you talk your faith to people. Take your hits. So many people say, "Oh, they might not." So, what does Jesus say? "They hated me. Watch out. They may very well hate you." Take your hit and move on. But show your children, your family, you are a man of faith. You're going to walk it, you're going to talk it, and you're going to let people know it. And I'll tell you something, that's not in my notes. I will wander from my notes because the Lord will speak to me. But at my last place of business, other than counseling and being a pastor, I was there 8 years. And if you could have seen the transformation in those 8 years with my staff, and I never preached a word. I never quoted the Bible. You know what I did? Just what our song was. I just stood there. And I wouldn't move. And when they wanted to talk about this, I would say, "That's wrong." They wanted to talk about, I could name the issues, but I don't want to get too excited today. But you know what I mean. The world is saying this, and God is saying this. Who am I going to choose? I'm not going to straddle the fence anymore. I gave that up decades ago. I want to go with God. I want to do what God says. And this is what God has for us. Show your faith. Don't back down. Don't hide in the corner. Show your faith. Let your kids know. "No, I wouldn't do that in my house." Eric can tell you that story too. We had a big room in our house on Main Street. And I mean, there'd be 20 people, 20 kids in there, okay? Which is good because then I know where my kids are, okay? Then they'd bring other guys in, okay? They called them skaters. Any of you know what the skaters were? Okay, but anyway. So they'd bring in kids from the street. And as the kids walked in, they would start with their talk. I wouldn't even have to say anything from the kitchen because the other kids would say, "I wouldn't say that here. I wouldn't say that here. You'll be out in the street before you know it." Because we lived our faith, we showed our faith. A, action. Fathers should work hard for their family. And I don't, and this isn't like, "Oh, who's the biggest breadwinner?" No, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about work hard, do what you can for your family. That is what your assignment is. 1 Timothy 5, verse 8. "If anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for his immediate family, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever." Now, in another translation, it says is worse than an imbecile. You can look up which translation it is. So one day this guy goes into Pastor Tim, that's my senior pastor's office, and he's moaning and groaning, but he is not working. and he's able to work, and he's not taking care of things, and she's carrying all the freight. And so Pastor Tim says, you're an imbecile, okay? So 2 days later, he comes down to my office, and he goes, oh, Pastor Tim called me a terrible name, Pastor Nick. I said, well, what did he say? And he says, he called me an imbecile. I knew exactly what verse he read to him. So you know what I said? Guess what? I said, you're an imbecile. If you're not even going to work to take care of your family, what do you think God thinks about that? How do you think he feels about that? Do you realize that, okay, he goes, God, husband, read Ephesians, okay, in premarital counseling, we do this all the time. To the wife, to the children, you stay in alignment. When you step out of your role, you are making a mess out of things. And this is where the troubles start. Your family is under your care. You are to provide, you are to protect, you're to set the rules, you're to set the agenda. And of course you would do that with your spouse, hand in hand. But you set the pace. For example, and I'm going to give some examples. It might embarrass Eric, but anyways, that's okay. There are times where he would not be respectful to Jill. Can you imagine that? Okay. Do you know how long that lasted if I was there? I'm telling you, it was. Remember Barney Fife, nip it in the bud? Okay. I'm a nipper. I got nipped when I was a kid, and in generation, I nip it. I don't agree with that nonsense. I'm to protect and provide for her first. Then we're going to go down to the kids. Okay. So we had to establish rules, regulations, curfews. I got the meanest dad in the world award once. I don't know if have you ever gotten one that your girls are mad at you, and so they give you this meanest dad in the world award. And I would wear it. Because, no, 2 of my girls went to North Central University, came back after 1 semester. They didn't go at the same time because they're a couple years apart. Both girls came back after the first semester and said, thanks, Dad. You wouldn't believe the mess these other girls are. I'm not saying every girl, but what I'm saying is, if you don't set the rules, and if you don't enforce them, just beware, because things can go south in a hurry. And I'm going to tell you this story too. So anyways, I can't tell you who, but another person in our church was talking to my daughter who spoke on Mother's Day and said, believe this or not, how did you survive being raised by those 2? And she goes, excuse me? They're so strict. You know, strict's not mean. Strict is what? Strict. If I say be home at 10 o'clock, they were home at 10 o'clock. And we would tell them, and you knock on our bedroom door, and you open the door, and you tell us you're home. Every one of them. So there would be in bed, you know, what time is it? And they would tell me the time. Then I'd go back to bed. I never looked at the clock. I never looked at the clock. So finally they figured it out. And one time when they were all together, they said, you and Mom never looked at the clock. I said, but what if I did? And you lied. Because in our family, you better take your licks. Don't try to lie your way out of it, because the punishment is much, much worse. So, yeah, as certain children found out. Okay. The T for a father is to be a teacher. Be a teacher. Teach your kids whatever you can teach them in all things. It says in Proverbs 22, verse 6, train a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not turn from it. Okay? Now, train him in what? Well, how about a few things like right and wrong? Okay. My mom used to say, oh, so if Bob jumped off the bridge, you're going to jump off the bridge. You guys ever hear this stuff? You know, some of you might be close to my age, okay? You teach them things. This is right, this is wrong. This is respect. This is a work ethic. Okay, there's another thing that I've been noticing a lot. In fact, not only have I noticed it, but people who are heading up major industries in our area are noticing it. Kids don't want to work. No, you know why? What is this stuff, you know? So what do? You budget their time. You tell them, you can do that. Is your homework done? Or you can do that, but take it easy. You're not making any progress. You're not earning anything doing that. I'm not saying there aren't people that can't make a living on computers. But when you're trying to train your child up, give them guidelines. Teach them God's way of doing things. Have them work hard. And there's other things that you can teach them. Like, for example, my dad and me and Eric have no business under the hood of a car. None. No, none. So there wasn't anything my dad was going to teach me about that. But he could teach me other things. And then I could teach Eric other things. But teach them what you can. But then there's people like Lisa's husband, Tony. Lisa was here on Mother's Day, okay? Who can do anything under the hood. He's like, wow. And his 14-year-old son, Evan, who is my sidekick, is way beyond me under the hood of a car. Why? Because he spent all that time with his dad under the hood of a car. And he watched, and his dad said, no, don't do that. You're going to get a shock. Which he pulled that trick on me one time, and he said, hey, take this and touch these two things. And back I went. Why? Because I don't know things under the hood. In fact, one time, this isn't in my notes either, my very, very, very good friend at church is a certified mechanic, okay? And we're out at our house, and I don't know if I'm putting in windshield washer fluid or antifreeze or oil, but I mean, I'm doing something so minor, okay? He calls up and he goes, hey, Jill, where's Nick? And she says, Bill, he's in the garage under the hood. And Bill goes, call 911, I'm on my way. This is a true story. And, but there are things, you may not know everything, but there's some things that you know really well. Pass it on to them. Let them know that there's things in this life. I told all my kids, I'm not going to tell you what to be when you grow up, but you're going to be something, so get used to it. You're going to learn a skill, you're going to get a degree or a certification or something, and you're going to take care of yourself and your family. That's teaching them, not enabling them, teaching them. Let them know that this is a tough life sometimes, but you can get through it with help. You know that children do not expect perfection, okay? But they do insist on consistency. And you should be a parent way before you try to be their friend. Oh, how I deal with this. People coming in, my kid doesn't like me. I go, well, welcome to the club, right? I had 3 teenage daughters at the same time. Is that fun? Any of you that's had it? That's a riot. 3 teenage daughters at the same time. 3 weddings in a row. Had to go to my 401k. Weddings cost, you know what I mean? So in other words, there's a lot that goes on in this world. But what we have to understand is I don't need to be their friend. I need to be their parent. But then you know what happens when they grow up? We're friends. Yeah. We're friends. I don't parent him anymore. If he asks me a question, I'll give him the answer that I think is best. But I don't have to parent him anymore. But boy, did I have to parent him through some interesting times that we had, But I'm not saying it's just him either. My oldest daughter and Jill, I had to put on a striped shirt and a referee whistle, put them in separate corners. Oh my gosh, it was just a good time there. That was... Friendship comes later. Be their cheerleader and their comforter. Help them when they're hurt. Cheer them on. I mean, we got 10 grandkids now. But anyway, they'll make you pictures, and you got to put it on the refrigerator, right? Because when they come back in, okay, and you don't know what it is. And they'll ask me, what? Well, I don't know what it is, son. But so you stick it on the refrigerator, and when they say, what do you think of that? What do you say? That's beautiful, don't you? You don't say, that's just a bunch of... No, you go, that's beautiful, that's great. Well, you're an artist, okay? And cheer them on. And if the best grade that they can get is a B or a C, then that's the best grade they can get. But make sure that they're given the effort. But you have to tell them, this is the way we do things here. There's another thing that I did to my kids and I do to my grandkids now. I made this up. I think I invented this, but they would say something like, I hate spelling. I can't spell. And I would say, Jackson's spell. Okay, and it worked, except then one of my grandkids looks at me and goes, I'm a Pardee. I'm not a Jackson. And I said, your mother's a Jackson. Just listen to what I'm saying. But you encourage them. You set their mind straight. Another thing that I want to emphasize to you is don't try the do as I say, not as I do approach, which was my father's approach. That doesn't work because the kids are watching you. Okay? And when you say, don't do that, but you do it, you've erased it right there. You set the example. You get out there and you show them that this is the way that we act. And that's what the E is. The E is example. Are you a role model? Because you are, whether it's good or bad. They're watching you. You're going to set the example. You're going to make the rules. You better follow the rules that you make, or they're going to do what you do. I mean, that's the problem that happens so often. Like in my life, I followed my dad's example. Unfortunately, it was a very, very bad example. My father had no respect for women. I loved my mom, but I didn't know how to behave to women because I watched him. Then this poor lady had 2 years of trying to straighten me out because I didn't understand certain things. And I still, to this day, am helping other men understand that's not how you treat a lady. I told all my kids, every one of them, boys and girls, watch when you're dating, when you think you're going steady, when you think that might be your choice, watch how they treat their parents. And they'll go, why? I said, watch and come back and talk to me. Because if they can't treat their parents right, they aren't going to treat you right. And they did. They listened and they, oh no, they treat them good. Okay, then we're okay. Because you have to shake off a lot of problems if you were raised on the wrong side. But you can. I don't want to give you, a defeatist approach here. You can change, okay? Proverbs 29:17. Discipline your son, and he will give you peace. He will bring delight to your soul. Oh, discipline. Okay. Do I mean taking a stick and whacking them? No. Okay. Oh, and by the way, in both Michigan and Wisconsin, corporal punishment is legal. Okay. You would think not by what you see on TV and on Facebook and that. But corporal punishment means with part of your body, you make contact with part of their body to get their attention. Not to bruise them, not to leave them. You know what I'm saying now? Okay, so where's the biggest part of a child's body with the most cushion? Anybody got the answer to that? Okay. All right. So you just give them. Don't loosen their teeth. Don't give them a bruise on the side of the face. I'm just talking about, and I was thinking the other day as I was putting this together, because one time Eric needed some discipline, and we went around the church. You remember this story? Oh, I do. Yeah, okay. He was goofing off in church in the pew, and Jill gave me the look, and that look meant hurt him bad. And so I didn't, but so now he's happy. No, we're walking outside. He's happy. I'm out of church, okay. But when we got down the steps, just like yours, down the steps and outside, I took one lap around the church where I think he landed 6 times. You know what I mean? Up off the ground. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. I gave him a few, okay? But you want to know something? He never did that again. I never left a bruise. I never hurt his pride or anything. I was just telling him, that will not do, okay? So you decide. I don't ever tell anybody to beat a child, ever, ever. But I also don't say let them get away with all that they possibly can to disrespect you and to insult you. That is not going to hold up. Another thing about an example is for all 4 of my kids, in the winter, we'd go outside and play in the snow, okay? And I remember this with all 4 of my kids. So I would be walking, and they would try to put their feet in mine. You guys notice this? They can't, because they're little, and I'm walking like this. But boy, they would try. You know what that is? That's, if he can do it, I can do it. And that's that example that you're setting. So watch what you say, watch what you do, watch how you behave, because your kids are taking it in like a sponge. And this is what we're held accountable to. Be the right example. Like a father, I got this quote from someone else, but I really like it. A father is someone you look up to no matter how big you've grown. Now, if Eric came up here and stood by me, you would say, I think Eric's bigger than his dad, okay? I was bigger than my dad. It's kind of like a generational thing. However, the day that he was able to look me right in the eye, I remember it well. Then I said, it's all going to be respect from here on. It's going to be respect, because there's no way I'm going to take him down. He's, you know, and my dad learned the same thing. Unfortunately, we were more physical at that time. But the idea is, as a father, you are always special. When they're younger, you're 3 times their height. And then you're twice their height. And then all of a sudden, uh-oh, and they're playing football, and they're lifting weights, and you're growing older, more sedentary, and so you're thinking, I don't think I want to take him on one-on-one right at this point. But you still, honestly, you can still, with your words and with your look, control their conduct. You know that? You ought to see Jill. Don't ever ask Jill to give you the look, because you won't recover for days, okay? But I'm the oldest of 6, and there's me and Chuck and Mike and Dave. And then in between was 2 sisters, okay? We weren't really well behaved. And so we would go to wedding receptions, and back then there was a lot of vivation, okay? There was a lot of indulgence. And so we would get a little bit out of control. And then at this one wedding in particular, this is a long time ago, you got to forgive me, but at this one wedding in particular, one of the people said, I think you just call the police, get him out of here. And the lady said, I'll call Jean. That's my mom. I'll call Jean. She'll be here in a few minutes and it'll all settle down. No problem. Jean walked in. Everybody calmed down, because you don't want to mess with mom. Mom, she would break the corporal punishment rule. She would get my attention real fast. But remember who our example is. It's Jesus, okay? Try to reflect Jesus. I got this pin, I don't even know, 20-some years now on my Sunday school folder when I teach Sunday school class, and it's WWJD, right? What would Jesus do? Okay? And I've kept that all that while. And then someone came up to me and said, you know what that really means, don't you, Nick? And I said, what? It's, what would Jill do? So, that's Jill. But anyway, pay attention to what's going on around you. Okay. The R is reliable. Be there for your family, okay? Stay in during the tough times. One of Eric's prayers this morning was, we're going to have tough times. God's word tells us there will be trials and tribulations, but stay tough. My favorite example, and Jill and I went through at least 2, she says 3, but at least 2 really bad times in our life. And the secret was that I held on to Jill's hand with this one and God's hand with this one. Trust me, and wait, and just stand firm. I love that verse, having done all to stand, stand. I tell people what that meant in Roman times was this soldier does not move. They'd still do it in the military. You keep that spot. Win, lose, or draw, that's your smart. So we need to understand we're to be reliable people as a father, okay? Luke 16:10 reads, whoever can be trusted with very little can be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with very much. Be trustworthy. Say what you mean what you say, do what you say you're going to do, because God does. In His Word, Numbers 23:19, you want to follow God's example? God is not human that He should lie, not a human being that He should change His mind. Does He speak and then not act? Does He promise and then not fulfill? And the answer is no. God does what He says He's going to do. And so should we as fathers. There might be extenuating circumstances where what you plan doesn't happen, but then explain it to the people. But to say something and then not do it, that really, really hurts a child. And by the way, everybody in here, whether you're my age, older or younger, you were a child at one time. So just think back. When were the times that were the most fun, and when were the ones that were the most hurtful? I got a quote from Bishop T.D. Jakes in one of his messages, and it was, "I want to congratulate all the men out there working diligently to be good fathers, whether a biological father or a stepfather or a spiritual leader. And I congratulate you also if you're in any of those categories." Jill and I took in a foster child once. We've taken in family members before. One of my brothers, one of her sisters, okay? Going back to, are you going to take care of your family or not? But when we took them in to get grounded, and then people will ask Jill and I, "How sad were you when your kids left?" Sad? What do you mean, sad? You got your high school degree, you're 18 years old, get a job, right? Oh, you're so mean, Nick. I started working when I was like 12, back in the good old days, okay? By 14, I had a savings account and a checking account, okay? In other words, why? Because they told me you're going to go out and get a job. So we have to understand this. We need to be there for our families, to hold them accountable, to bless them. Don't curse them, bless them. It's long been said that children don't come with a manual. Well, now most hospitals hand you out 6, 7, 8 pamphlets with your new baby, so it's not like the old days. This is how you feed them, this is how you change them, this is okay. But the fact of the matter is, there really isn't a manual for raising them other than the Bible. Go to the Bible. Now, are there things that it won't cover? Yeah, I'm sure. It doesn't tell you whether to breastfeed or whether not, or what time you start cereal, But what I'm saying, you'll figure that out. But it will say that once they're weaned, these become the rules now. This is how we raise our children. And the Bible will give us a lot of good information. And I know that I'm sharing a lot about fathers because it is Father's Day. But since everyone in here was a child at one time or another, I want to also share something for children. And you can share this with your children that are downstairs after the service, okay? Exodus 20, verse 12. "Honor your father and mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord is giving you." Okay? It's the 5th commandment. It's not just a suggestion. This is the 5th commandment. Honor your father and mother. Let's make sure that our children are honoring us, just as we were told to honor our parents. I remember one time, this goes back years ago, but Jill says, "Oh, hon, I got an idea. I'm going to write all the kids or call them, and I'm going to tell them to claim that verse. Claim that verse for your life. You honored us, so now claim it." And I remember that, and I thought, Jill, that's a really good idea. And I'll tell you this real quick, and both me and my son were prodigal sons, okay? All right, I'm just going to share it with you. Maybe he has in the past. You know the story of the prodigal son. The father stood and waited for the son to come home, okay? Now, what's really interesting is that in God's grace and in God's timing, he took 2 prodigal sons and made them pastors. That's a miracle. But you know what? God is still in the miracle-making business. He can heal. He can heal. I'm going to get into it in a moment here, too, about relationships, okay? Talk a lot about fathers, talk a lot about kids, and it's not all about sons. Although the Bible is written more in the masculine pronoun, do you know the relationship between fathers and daughters? The strength it has? James Dobson talks about it. Dennis Rainey talks about it. Why are they called Daddy's little girl? Why are they called his princess? Why do we walk them down the aisle? It's a big deal. The girls need their dads, just like the boys do. Don't think light of it. They need to understand, what is a man like? How does a man act? How does a man treat a woman? Don't have them go on looking for love in all the wrong places. Remember that song? Then you end up with all sorts of problems. But we need to be there for sons and daughters. We need to reconcile problems in our relationships. Restoration should be our prayer, and forgiveness and reconciliation should be our goal, our desire. And there's a lot of it that's needed in families. I remember when I walked my 3 daughters down the aisle, okay, one at a time, different times. But as I'm going up there, I'm thinking, I am putting a valuable Stradivarius violin in the hands of a gorilla. You know, dads, that's how dads think, you know. Then, when I did Eric and Leslie's wedding, I'm thinking, oh, I wonder if her dad's thinking the same thing, walking her up there, handing her off to Eric. But it's a high honor to be loved and respected by your children. But we need to understand that there's repairs to be made in families too. And Jill and I went and saw I Can Only Imagine a while back. Whoa, what a movie. But the only problem is it gave me flashbacks. I didn't share this with Jill yet. But it gave me flashbacks from my childhood, okay? Not only was I a prodigal son, I was a 13-year-old runaway, okay? My dad was an alcoholic, very, very abusive, okay? Okay? Now let's go forward, though. I went 20 years. Don't you dare do this. I went 20 years without a relationship with my father. Why? Because he deserved it. Hear my words. He deserved it. And the fact of the matter is, what does God say? Forgive. If you don't forgive, I don't forgive. It's in the Lord's Prayer. Said it on the cross. If you got things that you need to patch up, do it. I remember God talked to me. I was doing a group session at Lutheran Social Services with men having difficulties with their fathers. It was packed. 30 people, doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, you know, everybody having problems with their fathers. And the Lord spoke to me, and I don't hear words. I get impressions real strong. And he said, you're done fighting with your father. I said, well, who am I supposed to say that to out here? You know how guys get, okay? So then I'm driving home, and the Lord says, you're done fighting with your father. So I go home, and in my high IQ, I go to Jill, and I go, Jill, the Lord told me I'm done fighting with my father. What do you think it means? What do you think Jill said? Nick, I think you're done fighting with your father. I've done this more than once to Jill, okay? And I said, well, then what do I do? Come on, I mean, this is a long stretch of you're giving your dad grandchildren, but you have no relationship with them. This is bad behavior, bad behavior. God's not happy with that. And she said, you see that thing over there in the corner? It's called a phone. Go to the phone and call your dad. One of the hardest things I ever did. You want to know? This is what you're going to find out. And if you got to do this, do it. I called my dad and I said, Dad, we're done fighting. He goes, huh? Where do you think the pain was? Right here. He didn't even know. He just thought that I was being standoffish, acting kind of, weird. But God was very merciful, and he restored our relationship. We had a great last 10, 15 years of his life together, and I praise God for that. But I share this story with a lot of people because you're throwing away things. You're throwing away things. I know people that hold their grandkids from their grandparents, and I say, just pray about this and talk to the Lord about this. This cannot be what's pleasing to him. We need to restore our relationships, okay? And it's never too late, because you might say, oh, well, I think it's too late for that. Nope, it's never too late. Just get going. Move on. God is a good, good Father. Sometimes we sing that chorus, and you know what? So should we. So should us dads be good, good fathers. And what we'll need to do to accomplish that is to ask him for guidance and get into his word. Read his word. Because being a father is a tough job. And all of you know that, okay? It carries a lot of responsibilities. But boy, oh boy, can it be a blessing. So my prayer for all of you, and for myself included, is be the best father you can be. Make changes that you need, okay? Make corrections. Start over in some areas, and your children will call you blessed. That's a quote from the Bible. So as I wrap it up here before we pray, and you're welcome to come forward if you have a need of any kind, or if you have a relationship issue that you would like prayed over. Jill and I and the prayer team would be happy to, pray with you. But let's stay focused as we look at this acronym that I did today. Let's stay focused on our faith. Let's take action. Let's be a teacher. Offer hope and encouragement, okay? Be an example and stay reliable.